History remembers one as a seductress who tore a kingdom apart, and the other as a fool who gave it all away for nothing. Anne and Mary Boleyn were sisters, rivals, and pawns in the most dangerous game of love ever played. For 500 years, we have labelled Anne a witch and Mary a whore, but the truth is far more complex and terrifying. They were two women trapped in the orbit of a king who consumed people like wine, living in a court where a single wrong look could cost you your head. Their story isn't just a royal soap opera. It's a brutal lesson in survival, where the only way to win was to navigate the deadly whims of a tyrant who held the power of life and death in his hands. While Anne is the icon who changed history, Mary is the ghost who haunts the margins. But look closer, and you realize that Mary might have been the smart one. She was the first to catch Henry VIII's eye, the first to share his bed, and arguably the only one to escape him with her life. Anne, the brilliant strategist, aimed for the crown and paid for it with her blood. It begs the question, is it better to burn bright and die young, or to fade into the shadows and live to tell the tale? To understand their tragic end, we have to go back to the beginning, to a time before the scandals, when they were just two girls sent to the most sophisticated court in Europe to learn the art of being a woman. The Boleyn girls were shipped off to France, the finishing school for the elite, but they learned very different lessons. Anne thrived in the intellectual atmosphere, absorbing the politics, the fashion, and the dangerous idea that a woman could have a voice. She returned to England not as a submissive girl, but as a charismatic force of nature. Mary, on the other hand, learned the more traditional path, submission. She became the mistress of the French king first, gaining a reputation that would follow her home like a shadow, branding her as easy prey for powerful men. When they returned to the English court, the stage was set for a twisted love triangle. Mary caught Henry VIII's eye first. She became his mistress, possibly bore him children, and was essentially used and discarded. She was the appetizer before the main course. It was a humiliation that Anne watched closely. Anne saw her sister's shame and made a vow that would change the world. She would never be a mistress. She would be a queen or nothing at all. This decision sparked the king's obsession. Henry was used to women who said yes. Anne's no drove him to the brink of madness, starting a 7-year courtship that would shatter the church and rewrite the laws of God. Anne played a dangerous game of hard to get, retreating to Hever Castle and forcing the king to chase her. It wasn't just about chastity, it was political brilliance. She demanded marriage, a demand that required Henry to divorce his wife, Catherine of Aragon, and break with the Pope. For years, the world waited while Henry tore his kingdom apart to put a ring on Anne's finger. She wasn't just a lover, she was a revolution in a French hood, a woman who forced a king to choose between his faith and his desire. Finally, in 1533, she won. She was crowned queen, pregnant with the heir Henry so desperately wanted. It was the peak of her power, the moment she had risked everything for. But in the Tudor court, victory is just a prelude to danger. The higher you climb, the further you have to fall, and Anne was standing on a precipice made of enemies who were just waiting for her to slip. The fall began almost immediately. The child she bore wasn't the promised son, it was a daughter. Elizabeth, Henry's disappointment was palpable, and the clock started ticking on Anne's life, while Anne fought for her life in the snake pit of the court. Mary made a shocking move. Widowed and ignored, she did the unthinkable. She married for love. She chose a soldier with no rank and no fortune, a man named William Stafford. It was a slap in the face to her ambitious family. Anne and her father were furious. Mary had thrown away her position for a nobody, proving once again that she didn't understand the game of power. They banished her, and the Queen cut off her own sister, leaving her destitute. It seemed like the final victory of the smart sister over the foolish one. But fate has a twisted sense of irony. By banishing Mary, Anne inadvertently saved her life. While Mary went off to live in obscurity, Anne was left alone at court, isolated and vulnerable, just as the king's eye began to wander to a new, quieter woman named Jane Seymour. Anne's failure to produce a male heir became her death warrant. A miscarriage in 1536 sealed her fate. Henry decided she was cursed, and his right-hand man, Thomas Cromwell, concocted a monstrous lie to get rid of her. Cromwell's plot was swift and brutal. He accused Anne of adultery with 5 men, including her own brother, George. It was a smear campaign designed to destroy not just her life, but her soul. The charges of incest and treason were absurd, but in a tyranny. Truth is irrelevant. Anne was arrested and dragged to the Tower of London, the very place she had stayed before her coronation. Realizing too late that her ambition had built her own scaffold, the trial was a show, a piece of theatre where the verdict was written before the jury sat down. Anne defended herself with wit and courage. But she was arguing with ghosts. The king wanted her gone. She watched her friends and her brother die, knowing she was next. A queen sacrificed on the altar of a king's ego. On May 19, 1536, Anne walked out to Tower Green. She didn't scream or beg. She faced the French swordsman with a dignity that shamed her accusers. The execution was precise. One stroke of the sword, and the woman who had changed England was gone. Henry erased her from his life, marrying Jane Seymour just days later. He thought he had destroyed Anne Boleyn. He believed that by cutting off her head, he had silenced her forever, turning her into nothing more than a cautionary tale. But while Anne died, Mary survived. She lived out her days in the countryside with the man she loved. Far away from the axe and the intrigue, she died a wealthy woman, inheriting the Boleyn estate after her father's death. The foolish sister won the only prize that really mattered, a long life and a peaceful death in her own bed. And Anne, she got the last laugh. Her daughter, Elizabeth, became the greatest monarch in English history. Elizabeth I ruled for 45 years. The golden age of England. She was Anne's revenge, the living proof that Henry was wrong. The Boleyn legacy wasn't the son Henry wanted. It was the daughter he rejected. Anne's blood didn't stain the Tudor line. It defined it, proving that a woman's worth isn't determined by a man's approval. The story of the Boleyn sisters is a tragedy of 2 paths. One chose power and paid the ultimate price. The other chose love and survived. They remind us that history is written by the survivors, but it is shaped by the martyrs, whether you choose the crown or the quiet life. The system is rigged against you, but sometimes, just sometimes, you can beat the house. If you found this deep dive into the Boleyn sisters fascinating, hit that subscribe button. We have more dark history secrets waiting for you. Which sister do you think truly won? Let us know in the comments. See you next time.